Hello, my yarny friends. I'm Sara Sach, and welcome back to another edition of This or That. So what is a This or That video? What it is I give us a subject to talk about. And then I ask you the question, do you prefer this or do you prefer that? And that gives you an opportunity to give your opinion. And again, there are no wrong answers. It's just our opinions on this particular subject. And I really encourage you to put your opinions down in that comment section so I can read them and others can read them because we can learn from each other. Now today we're talking about turning chains. And what that means is when you finish your row and you either chain 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever your stitch is, and you turn, and what you do for that first stitch. Sometimes, and we're basically going to be talking about double crochet rows. When you do a row of single crochet, you usually just chain 1, turn, and if your next row is single crochets, you just start right in that first stitch and keep right on going. And it's also true of a half double crochet. A lot of times you chain 1 or 2 and you turn and you go right in that first stitch and keep right on going. But when it comes to double crochets or bigger, we usually don't do that. And that's what we're talking about today. Do you usually chain 3, skip that first stitch and start in the next stitch because that chain 3 counts as a first double crochet? Or do you make what's called a standing crochet? A lot of crocheters also, instead of a chain 3, will do a chain 2 and start in the next stitch. I know it's very confusing. So what do we do? Do we chain 2? Do we chain 3? Or do we do a standing crochet? Let me give you a little demonstration so I can tell you what I'm talking about. So on today's video, what we're basically talking about is how do you turn and add your new double crochet stitch, okay? So here's one. Let's start with this one. You basically, which is what we usually do, either chain 2 or 3. We chain 3, we turn our work, then we double crochet in that next stitch, and then we continue on with whatever pattern that we're working with. And a lot of times you end up with this hole, okay? And then also, this really doesn't look like a double crochet. It just looks like, we chained, all right? Another thing that you can do instead of chaining 3 is chain 2. And that gives you a little bit better appearance. So I took one of those chains out, and that helps to eliminate that hole. So it looks a little better, but we have to remember that that chain 2 also counts as our first double crochet. But what if we don't want to do it that way? Okay, so you can do what's called a standing double crochet. Okay, and so now we can just put 2 wraps on our crochet hook and turn, and then we go right in that first stitch and we stitch a double crochet. Make sure you go through those last 3 together. And then that gives you a double crochet right there at the beginning of your row. You don't end up with a hole. It can be a little bit bunchy. Okay, so let's look at it on this one. All right, so we're just turning, okay? And again, we're dealing with double crochets. When you have a single crochet, you're just going to chain 1 and turn if your next row is a row of single crochets. If it's a half double crochet row, you usually chain 2 and turn. And if your row is another row of half double crochets, your half double crochet counts as your first stitch. We're basically talking about double crochets, all right? And so here we have a nice patterned piece that we used the other day when we were talking about multiples. All right, so you're going to put 2 wraps on your hook and go ahead and turn. Then you'll go right in that first stitch and yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, and go through those last 3. Then you'll double crochet in that next stitch just like you normally would. And that eliminates that hole that you get sometimes. But like I said, it can be just a little bit bunchy. And what I recommend is you do what works best for the project that you're working on. I like using this a lot of times. It can be used in a round as well. When you join in a circle, you can use the standing double crochet anytime that you do a chain 3. Okay? It is a little bit different, and like I said, it can be a little bit bunchy. But let me turn this. And you can see, I just turned it and did that standing double crochet. And then I'm just working back, and make sure you go right in that standing double crochet stitch that counts as your first double crochet. But what I wanted to show you is how much neater it looks here and here where we turned, because it's nice and compacted. All right, but again, it can be just a little bit bunchy. And so it kind of is determined by what project you are working on. But like I said, it can be used when you have straight rows and you turn. It can be used when you join a circle and chain 3. Anytime that chain 3 counts as your first stitch, you can substitute the standing double crochet. All right, now I do know there are other ways of doing it. This is the way that I was taught to do it, and I really like it because it does fill in that little hole that we get sometimes. Although sometimes I kind of like it for the pattern that I'm doing. It just gives it a little extra something in there. So like I said, it just depends on what you're working on. And if you want the edges to be nice and straight without adding a trim, it works really nice. And it also, like I said, looks really nice when you're working in a circle and you don't want that obvious chain 3 going up the side of, say, your hat or around placemat or something. Okay, and so here's the question. Would you work the standing double crochet on your projects if it was necessary? Or would you just stick with your chain 3 or chain 2? Many times I do that chain 2 just because I don't want to have that extra bunchiness, especially when you're working with thinner yarns. It does make a difference. All right, but I wanted to give you that demo so that you could try it out yourself and see if you would like it. Please put your comments down below this video because I am really interested in your opinion on this subject. All right, thank you so much for being with me today, and I'll see you next week for another edition of This or That.